Holy shit, welcome to the show. This is Welcome to the End of the World podcast, and we are here today to talk about Tank Girl, and I am joined by Travis. Say hello.
Hey.
So we're going to talk about Tank Girl today. It has been an interesting week for myself, so before we
hmm
talk about that, I guess we'll just do our usual. How's things been?
It's been pretty good. We're doing I never want to reveal too much of what I do at work, but
No,
we've
no,
been
no.
working on fake tax returns and
Okay.
doing them by hand.
All right.
Uh I feel pretty good. I think I've got a grasp on it. I think I understand
Nice.
taxes. I'm all, it took me 41 years of my life, but I got there. I
Nice.
understand taxes at 41.
Nice.
Um
Hey, that's better than probably a lot of people, honestly.
I I
I'd
don't
be
talk to
lying
all
if I
those
said I
people.
understood, if I understood every part of it. I
Oh,
do my own taxes. I've done my own taxes, like for the last 5 years now.
oh, okay,
And I try my best, and then
yeah.
that's all I can do. I'm not an
That's
expert
all
at
they should
getting a mass return, but
oh, yeah,
you
no,
know,
they should only
I
expect us
usually
to do
don't
our
pay
best.
in. I never have to pay in. I usually end up like
Oh,
getting like $20 back or something like that. It's not much, but I get
no, it's not,
something like that.
my goal is to get to 0, but, some years I pay, some years they give me, about 100 or so.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
about it.
yeah. Well,
But
speaking of
yeah.
money, we spent a bunch of it this week because
Yeah.
previously listeners who've followed us along our journey, I don't know how many episodes in we're now. I've gotten lost this week in the hustle and bustle, but previously I said that we were in the process of looking to buy a house. We've been looking for a while. Well, we bought a house, so or at
Yeah.
least we're in the process of it. We gotta we our offer was accepted. We have given the money. We are going through the process. So supposed to move in on December 10th. So about a couple weeks away. So
Awesome.
it's been kind of stressful.
Well, yeah.
Been running around, making sure doing everything correct. Don't want to all of a sudden have something like turn up at the last minute. But
Oh, yeah.
also trying to like figure it out as we go a little bit because this is the first time for us. So it's kind of one of those things
Mhm.
that neither one of us were really expecting. Given like the context of our lives, like me and my wife, both of us kind of had written off home ownership as like a thing that we could ever have.
Mhm.
But it's just like the way the dominoes fell in the last couple of
Yeah.
years, it kind of ended up in our favor in such a way that we could. So
Yeah.
thought now, given the shot, you might as well take it, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
really looking forward to it. It's a beautiful little house.
Yeah, big time congrats,
It
man.
has a huge attic that I'm in love with.
Yeah, I saw that in the pictures.
Yeah. I was gonna say I sent you the pictures. Yeah. That attic is amazing, right? I
Oh,
think
that's
everyone
amazing.
that sees it is like, oh shit, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it's
Mhm.
pretty fucking nice. Now I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
have it to myself, obviously.
Well,
It's not
no,
like a
because
thing
it
where
does look pretty
I have.
open.
Yeah, no, it's huge. Yeah, it's a massive attic. It's all like carpeted and everything, so it's like a living
Yeah.
space. So it's pretty nice. Um, yeah, it's cool. I like it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been my week. Been doing that, been working, and then dealing with everything else going on in the world that's been popping up and and
Yeah.
everything else. We talked about politics a lot last week, so we'll skip over that for this week. And
Yeah.
I guess we'll just dive on into Tank Girl. I mean, why the hell not, right?
Why the hell not?
There's a lot to talk about with this movie,
Oh, yes.
like a lot. And I kind of want to do it justice because this is a movie that I have liked since the first time I saw it.
Right there with
Uh,
you.
I like it every time I watch it. I like more and more things about it. I find more and more things interesting the more I watch it. It's one of those movies that
Mhm.
I've always just really enjoyed, and it puts a smile on my face because I can remember
Absolutely.
like being a fat 13-year-old watching this movie for the first time on Cinemax and just being like, how have I like this is like what is this?
Yes.
Like how did I never see this movie before? So let's talk about Tank Girl. Let's talk about the background, and then we'll get into the plot and why we both like this movie so much.
Yes.
So this movie came out on March 30th, 1995. So we're
Mhm.
still in the 90s there. Jumping from our previous week, we talked about Neon City, which came out in 1992. So we're
Mhm.
jumping forward 3 years. We will
I'd have
talk
been
about who was on the charts.
yeah, I think I'd have been
Yeah,
12 when this
12.
came
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Maybe 11.
A
But
lot. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah,
So it was directed by Rachel Talali, I believe is how her name is pronounced.
I never saw the
I did
pronunciation.
listen to
Or
an interview with her.
oh,
And
okay,
that is
yes,
how they announce that is how the presenter pronounced her name, and she did not correct the person. So
there you go.
I
It's good
if
enough.
she's either a very kind person when it comes to her name being mispronounced, or that is how you pronounce her name. I do not
Mhm.
know. I'm very kind when people mispronounce my name. I'm a teacher. I usually just get
Oh yeah,
called Mister most days.
yeah.
But they try their best. So what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
She was a director of this film, and
Yes,
after this film, she has mostly stuck to the realm of TV shows. She has
yes.
directed a literal shit ton of TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
The Flash, like
Doctor Who is in
Doctor Who. I
there.
was gonna say a bunch of Doctor Who's. Like basically every big TV show you can think
Yeah,
of,
she's
with the
she's got like
exception maybe of
one.
Game of Thrones. She's directed.
Yeah,
Like
like
she's got
Boston Public, Ally
yeah,
McBeal.
going
Like
all the
there's
way
so
back to the
many.
90s. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
All the 2000s, Criminal Minds, all those. Yeah, a lot of TV shows.
she's a
Before
working
this,
director, like full
very much
on.
so.
Hmm.
Very, very much so. Before this was her third movie before she kind of, well, we'll talk about why her career kind of took a different trajectory after this
Hmm.
movie. But this was her third movie. Her first two movies were a little sci-fi horror movie called Ghost in the Machine, I believe is
Yes.
the name of it, which I have not seen, but I watched the trailer
Oh,
of. It looks
I
fucking
liked that movie
cool.
a lot.
Okay, I have
I
not
did
seen
see
it.
that one when I was a kid. I was
All
probably
right.
too young for it, but
Uh-huh.
I
It looks
remember
fucking
really liking
cool.
it.
I like
Yes.
the trailer. The trailer made it look really cool. It is on Tubi, I believe. So I
Oh,
might have to
awesome.
check that one out tonight. And
Yes.
she also directed the maybe one of the worst Nightmare on Elm Street movies, Freddy's Dead.
Yeah.
It's not very good.
It's
But
not.
that's not necessarily her fault.
It's not.
There's a
No.
lot, there was a lot going against Freddy's Dead. It
Oh
was like
yeah.
what, the sixth or seventh Nightmare on Elm Street movie at that point
I
in time.
think so.
They had kind of beaten the dead horse pretty well at
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
They had dragged
It
Freddy's
was.
dead carcass along. They were beating the shit out of him.
Oh, hell
They definitely needed to change it up, and
yeah.
yeah, that they would eventually. But there's only
Yeah.
like, if you look at all the Nightmare on Elm Street, like the first three are really good,
Hmm.
and then it kind of takes four and five and six are not so good. New
Uh,
Nightmare is cool.
yeah.
I like New Nightmare, and then there all the well, not all the, I guess there was the TV show, and
Oh, I
then
forgot about that.
yeah, there was a TV show of Nightmare on Elm Street, yeah. And then there was the remake with the dude from who was the guy that they replaced Robert England with?
Oh,
He was in Watchmen.
yeah. Jackie Haley
Yes,
or Jackie
yes.
Earl Haley or something like that.
Yeah, I knew you were talking about. Yeah, I didn't like
Yeah.
that version. I didn't like it at all.
I didn't. I
So,
haven't seen it.
yeah,
He'll always be a bad news bear to me.
yeah, always in his heart, always in her heart, part of
Yes.
the bad news crew. Um, so she directed those two movies, and then she followed that up with her first, like, not her first, but like her next big movie was Tank Girl, which
Yes.
was a British comic at the time, which was written by the writers of this movie, two
Hmm.
different writers, Hewitt and Alan Martin. Do you know
Yes.
anything about either of these guys?
I don't know anything. I even like in the past week or so, I've tried to get into the comic, like reading it,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of like when I'm going to bed or something like that,
Hmm.
and I already have a terrible attention span,
Yeah.
so trying to follow a very non-traditional like comic like this,
Yeah.
it was tough. So I didn't get very far. I didn't make it all the way through volume one, but
uh,
I got a few like four chapters in on
that's
there.
fair.
So
So
it's pretty cool though. It's pretty fun.
it's very, very British, and
Yes. Oh God, yeah.
it very much references the punk culture of the 70s and 80s and
Hmm.
90s of England. Interestingly, the writer Jamie Hewlett, he's one of the writers of it. He would also be the writer of another movie that will eventually talk about. He contributed to the story of Cloverfield, but in addition to that,
Oh,
his biggest claim to fame is he is kind of like the artistic director behind the Gorillas and their kind of like
oh,
whole image.
really?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
okay. I see
also
it now.
Blur shows up in the Tank Girl comic books as well.
Yes. Oh, do they?
And the lead singer of Blur was also in Gorillaz. So
Yeah.
there's kind
Yes.
of like a little connection there between all that. So
Yeah.
the other writer, Alan Martin, mostly just known for Tank Girl, has
Okay.
written other things, but movie wise, this is pretty much it,
Hey, it's a
right?
good way to go. If you're going to
Yeah.
be known for one.
Yeah. So those are the two writers and the director. There is a third writer because this movie was taken over by the studio. And
Oh, yes, it
the
was.
studio head that took it over was a guy who only has really two credits. And his name is Ted's Sarfane.
Yeah, I
And
don't
that's
know that one.
Ted's, not Ted, Ted's with an
Huh.
S. Sarfane, I believe, is his name. I could be wrong, but other than contributing the writing of this as a studio writer, he also did touch-ups for Terminator 3, which is
Oh,
another
that's
movie that
unfortunate.
eventually we'll talk about, which is also not particularly a very good movie.
No, it's
Um,
not.
yeah, we'll get to our cast in a moment because there's a good amount of them that are fun to talk about.
Oh,
This movie
yes.
was filmed in White Sands, New Mexico, which is not that far from where you
Mm,
and I used to live. And
exactly.
White Sands, New Mexico is a very, very beautiful place.
Oh, yes.
I think it's one of the prettiest places in the world. Not
Hmm.
everyone seems to agree, but I think it's pretty fucking
Oh, yeah.
snazzy. So this movie was made with a budget of $25 million, and it made $6 million.
That sounds about right.
And 2 million of that 6 million was the first weekend.
Wow. Yeah, this was definitely not a mass appeal movie at all.
Yeah, no. So you can see her career kind of like it was kind of hitting this upward peak. You know, she did
Hmm.
Freddy's Dead, Ghost in the Machine. Tank Girl is this like $25 million movie. It could be a big thing. She kind of a comic book superhero tie-in, you know.
Hmm.
It had like there's like you can go online and find like the publicity behind this movie. Like they tried to put
Hmm.
some spin into this movie. They wanted it to be successful. They thought they had a
Yeah.
hit. Like they thought this was going to be a hit. It did not. And
No.
pretty much immediately afterwards, she stops doing movies so much. And I think you can tell a
Hmm.
lot of that as we get into it is because of her experience making this movie. The studio basically
Yeah.
took it over at a certain point and basically took the movie from her. So the finished product is not exactly her finished product that she had in mind. It is what the studio kind of made her could do with
Yeah.
everything that she had. So yeah,
Which
that's kind of
I wish we could,
good.
see the movie that should have been, you
Honestly,
know?
yeah. I honestly, this is one of those movies that I wish there was a director's cut because
Oh, yes.
there's apparently like an hour of footage that is just gone, that just
Ah,
was cut altogether from the movie. A lot of it involves Subgirl, and we'll talk about
yes.
Subgirl because she was supposed to be Bjork,
Oh, that would have been
which would have been fucking
amazing.
crazy. Yeah, it would have been pretty crazy.
I love
Uh,
Bjork. I'm like a huge
yeah,
fan.
love Bjork. She's amazing. I'm a massive Bjork fan.
Oh, yes.
I
And I
have
like her
I have a
acting.
large I have a large
She was in
collection
that,
of Bjork
uh,
albums.
oh man, what, I forgot the name of the director's name now, but that one movie where she's like that factory worker or something like that. Anyway,
Oh,
um,
not familiar. Or if I
is it
am, I
Lars
don't
von
remember the
Trier?
title.
I think it's a
Oh,
Lars von
maybe
Trier movie.
it could
I'm
be.
probably wrong, but anyway,
I'm not sure. So let's go into the cast. So Bjork is not
yes,
in this, but she was supposed to be. And she accepted the role and was going to do it and then kind of turned it down. And yeah, they hired
there
somebody else.
was
But that
there
happened
was
with a
another
couple different
musician
cast
that
members.
there was another musician that was going to be in it, but wasn't.
Who's that?
Courtney Love,
Yes, Courtney Love was also supposed to be in this and was not. And
but
there are
that
a
was
few musicians
because
that do pop up though.
there are.
So it's
So
kind of
yeah,
interesting that we get
but
some, but not the whole
yeah,
crew that we expected that them to originally start with. So Tank Girl herself is played by Lori Petty, who we talked about just a couple
yes.
weeks ago when we talked about Prayer of the Roller Boys, because we talked about how that movie had so much in common with
Hmm.
Point Break, which is a fantastic movie from the
Fantastic movie.
with Lori Petty in it. Do you have a favorite Lori Petty movie?
I mean, it's Tank Girl,
Tank Girl.
like big time.
Um, so other
I
than Tank
love Point
Girl,
Break though.
Point Break is amazing. When I was a kid, my parents both worked like overtime hour kind of stuff. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
have a babysitter. And so my babysitter was this woman named Michelle. And
Uh-huh.
the movie that she would constantly play for us, and I mean almost every day for a year, was A League of Their Own.
Oh,
And
okay.
Lori
I was
Petty is
worried
in
you
A
were gonna
League of
say a
Their
different
Own.
movie.
No, it was a different Lori Petty movie. No, no, no. Yeah, so that's the movie I've seen the most with Lori Petty is A
That's
League of
fair.
Their Own. But she's amazing in Tank Girl. She's amazing in Point Break. She
Yes.
is shows up in some Pauly Shore movies
Yeah.
in the
Yes. I
army
was gonna
now.
say in the army now. I was
Yeah.
worried you were gonna say that. I was like, you had an abusive babysitter.
No, 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 no. I did not have. I was not forced to watch In the Army now, but I did watch it as I got older, and I don't mind In the Army now.
I was gonna
Not
say, as
not
far
my
as Polly
favorite
Shore
Lori
movies
Petty
go,
movie, but yeah, it's not the
it's
worst Pauly Shore movie. There are worse Pauly
yeah,
Shore
because I
movies.
mean, you
It's
could
not
almost call it.
Son-in-Law.
Oh God,
Son-in-Law is my favorite Pauly Shore movie.
is it?
Yeah, I love
Is it
Son-in-Law.
weird that I like? I know it's weird that I like Biodome,
Oh, I
and
hate
then I like.
Biodome.
See, I think I'm one of two people that likes Biodome.
I hate Biodome. Biodome is what Biodome makes me angry. It's just such a
Oh, and it
stupid
should,
movie. I'm just like, God, I hate
and
that
I
stupid
shouldn't
fucking
like it,
movie.
but there's
Oh
something wrong with
Lord.
me. So,
Son-in-law I can tolerate. Son-in-law I can
and
tolerate because the supporting cast I think is fun
oh
around
yeah,
Pauly Shore. But, yeah. You could say the same thing
yeah.
about the Goofy movie. He's in that too,
Oh,
for
that's right. Yeah.
ever so briefly.
First time I saw a Goofy movie was in the daycare section of a gym my mom went to.
Nice.
That was a weird time,
I
but
s- pretty sure I saw the Goofy movie in theaters.
yeah.
Pretty
Well,
sure
we
we went and
didn't.
saw that one.
We lived so far from any theaters. It would
Yeah,
have been
it's
like
true.
an hour or so to
Small
get to one.
town, Texas.
Yeah, I grew up
So
small town Texas.
Lori Petty is Tank Girl, but she wasn't the original Tank Girl. There was another Tank Girl before her.
That's
Another
insane to me.
actress, Emily Lloyd, was the original actress cast.
Hmm.
She's a British actress who,
Okay.
unfortunately, had a habit of getting cast in movies and then not working out.
Oh.
So she was fired from this because she refused to cut her hair.
Oh, that. Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
She turned down the lead in Pretty Woman.
Oh, oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, yeah. She also got fired from a Woody Allen movie for kind of just being annoying, and being difficult to
Wow.
work with. I think she was in Husbands, or she was supposed to be in Husbands and Wives, and she was fired, and they just cut her out and replaced her
Oh,
character.
wow. Damn.
Yeah, so yeah, she kind of is one of those actresses that, for whatever reason, had people had a difficult time working with her.
Hmm.
Not really sure why. I didn't really feel the need to really go down the
Mm,
rabbit hole of investigating
no.
exactly what she did or didn't do or anything like that. But she was the original Tank Girl, which
Huh.
I guess kind of makes sense because she was British,
Well,
but
yeah.
I can't see anyone else other than Lori Petty being Tank Girl.
No.
It just
And
doesn't
neither
make
did
sense to
Lori
me.
Petty.
Yeah, I know, right? Whenever she apparently first read the script and saw the character, she was just like, "Oh no, that's me! Like I
Yeah.
am Tank Girl. Like
Yes.
that's me." Which is originally why they cast her because she has a lot of similarities to the character that she's playing. So
Which is
she
wild.
kind of just ramps her personality up a little bit. She is joined in this adventure along with Ice-T, who was
Yes.
paid $800,000 to be in this movie, apparently.
Nice.
So apparently, in an
Because.
interview, yeah, apparently in an interview with some people, they were giving him shit for being in this movie, and he was like,
Hmm.
"I got paid $800,000," and they just like changed the conversation. They were
Yep.
like, "All right, shit, I can't, you got paid almost $1 million to be in Tank Girl. Like, damn. All right,
Well, because before
he
that,
is
he
in a
was
kangaroo
in.
outfit.
Yeah, he is. Well, because before this movie, he was in what, New Jack City, and he got like five
Yes,
grand for that.
yeah, I got
So
paid very, very poorly for New Jack City.
yeah,
The rumor is,
so
yeah, New Jack City is my favorite Ice-T movie. I love New Jack City. It's one of my favorite fucking movies of all time. I
yeah.
grew up watching New Jack City on HBO as it used to come on all the time,
Hmm.
and I have so much of that movie memorized.
That's a movie
It's a
I
great movie.
haven't watched all the way through yet. I
Oh,
need to.
I love New Jack City.
I
It
need to
is,
watch it.
I like King of New York a bit more, but New Jack
Hmm.
City is a really good fucking movie.
Yeah.
Um, yes, so Law beyond being in New Jack City, obviously, bunch of movies, shit ton of
Oh yeah.
movies. Not as many as his Ice Cube counterpart, but
No.
better selection of movies than Ice Cube, I will say. He
Oh,
was
it's
also
not.
in Law and
He
Order.
didn't do any. Are we there yet? Movies.
Not that I know of, not yet. He is a nightmare walking psychopath talking, so maybe that really wouldn't work very well with
Oh yeah.
kids, you know. But he is in Law and Order, which is funny because in this movie he says he was a cop, which is
Yeah,
kind of funny.
yeah.
Was a cop. Yeah, he plays with the Rippers. If you're not familiar with Tank Girl, the premise is basically the apocalypse has happened. We'll get to it when we get to the plot of the movie.
Yeah.
But it's in Australia. There are these kangaroo mutated creatures called the
Hmm.
Rippers, and so Ice-T is playing a kangaroo in this movie. So there is that.
And they introduce reincarnation is a thing.
Why not? Let's add it in.
I mean,
We're
let's
getting
do it.
crazy. Let's just do it. Speaking of getting crazy, this is Naomi Watts is Jet Girl.
Yes.
She's gonna take you around the world. She's gonna make you be a girl, Jet Girl, Jet Boy, and Jet Girl. So she had been in a bunch of movies. Obviously, Naomi
That was
Watts is
great, by the
in
way.
a. Thank you. She's in a ton of David Lynch movies. She's in Inland
Yes.
Empire, which is a fun time. Mulholland Drive. She was
Mulholland Drive.
in the most recent Twin Peaks. She was in that as well.
Oh, okay.
She was also in The Ring. So there's that.
Yes.
If I didn't really like The Ring or The Ring 2, but
Yeah.
hey, she's in those.
She's
This
in
was her
those.
first big movie though. So this was
Yes,
she had
it
been in movies
was.
before then, but this was like her first big budget movie.
And I'll say this about her as Jet Girl, which I think is
Hmm.
the only time we ever see her with black hair like that.
Yeah.
100% informed my like who I'm attracted to as like far as like what they look like. That look. Like if you, I don't know if you've ever seen my ex-wife. Pretty similar.
Nice. No, I have not that I know of. Possibly though, but it's
Yeah,
been a
like
long time if I have. But yeah, so Jet Girl here was supposed to originally be Courtney Love.
that's
Um,
right.
that did not happen. So
No.
Courtney Love, around the same time Kurt Cobain dies, when they were casting
Yes.
this movie around 94, not early 95. So she kind of decides not going to be doing the
Yeah,
movie.
it's not
She
gonna happen.
does do help with the soundtrack though.
She does.
So yeah,
So,
so Courtney and
which
Hole
is
shows up
fantastic.
on the soundtrack. The soundtrack is very good. We'll talk about the soundtrack here in a moment
Yes.
before we get into the movie. It is a very good soundtrack. Um, so yeah, Jet Girl's played by Naomi Watts here. She actually regrets this movie. It's one of the movies that she kind of is like, I
Oh,
wish
that
I wasn't in
sucks.
that movie. Yeah, she's been in a lot more like artsy kind of like highbrow stuff since
Okay.
this. So maybe this is kind of
Yeah.
like one of those ones that she looks back on and is kind of like, I would like to take Tank Girl back a little bit, but it's a
Oh, I
fine
loved
movie.
her in it.
Yeah, I think she's great. She's great. She comes across as very shy compared to
Yes.
Tank Girl, which is kind of the perfect contrast, but she kind of
Which is-
grows and changes and comes out of her shell
yes.
towards the end of the movie. So I
Which is
thought that was
funny
great.
because in interviews I dug into because I love this movie and I watch it. I've already seen it like more than a double, like more than a couple dozen times.
Yeah.
So I watched it, I loved it, but then I was like, well, now I just need to dig in because I need more. But
Yeah.
I was looking at interviews and everything. I was watching interviews, and she was saying that that was basically like that shyness and leaning on Tank Girl or Lori Petty in this case.
Hmm.
Um, that mirrored real life. Like she was actually
Yeah.
like that because she'd never been on a studio movie before,
Yeah.
and so she was very much like leaning on Lori Petty. Like she would if she wouldn't ask for them for like to get her anything to drink or anything like that, and Lori Petty would be like, no, just ask, just get water, like telling him to bring stuff to her, and then by the end of the movie, she was more comfortable, and it was, basically life imitating art.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I like that.
So the villain of this movie is played by a
Oh,
wonderful Malcolm McDowell, who was obviously in
yes,
A Clockwork Orange.
yes.
He actually loved making this movie. He said that this was one of his like all-time favorite movie making experiences. He apparently
Oh,
loved Naomi Watts. He loved Lori Petty.
yeah.
He loved working with Rachel Talali. Like he just had a fun time. He said it was up there with Clockwork Orange with some of the most fun he's ever had making a movie.
Oh,
And
it
you can
shows.
tell that in the movie that he is having
Yes.
fucking fun here. Like he is the
Oh,
villain.
yeah.
He gets to ham it up. He gets to have a lot of fun. He gets to overact. He's just
Mm-hmm.
having himself a blast. And yeah,
Oh, it is
it's a great
great.
time. Yeah, so those are our main cast: Lori Petty, Naomi Watts, Ice-T, Malcolm McDowell. They are joined along with Jeff Korber, who is her love interest, the
Yeah.
Lori Petty's, as a kangaroo.
As a
We
kangaroo.
also have Reg E. Cathy, who is the sax playing kangaroo.
Hmm.
We also get Scott Coffey, who is the kind of the
Okay.
sexual assaulting kangaroo.
It's a kind of kangaroo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was also in some David Lynch movies too. So
Hmm.
then we get
Oh yeah,
Ann
I
Cusack
recognize him.
as Subgirl. So she only shows up for a brief period of time. Apparently,
Yeah.
most of the stuff that got cut was Subgirl scenes. Subgirl was supposed to be a bigger character. She was supposed to show up at the end of the movie as well.
Hmm.
There was supposed to be a whole lot more to that musical interlude, and Subgirl was supposed to be a far more pivotal character to the movie.
Hmm.
And they basically cut almost all of that out. So
Which is a
instead,
shame.
we get Anne Cusack showing up for just a little bit. And yes, she is related to John Cusack and Joan Cusack, part of that Cusack's
And
brother
two
sisterhood.
other siblings.
There's a lot
They
of
have a lot of
Cusacks running
siblings.
around. Yeah, they're all hanging out in Chicago. You could probably, if you're hanging around Chicago, I bet you run into one of them getting a hot dog eventually. You do it enough, you're bound to run into a Cusack getting a dog.
Just
Yeah,
one of
so
those
she is,
big East Coast families, like the
yeah,
Baldwins and the Wahlbergs and the
true.
Cusacks.
Yeah. So she is Subgirl. It was originally supposed to be Bjork, like we talked about. She signed
Hmm.
on, didn't left. Um, Another musician in this movie is Ratface, who is played by Iggy Pop.
Awesome. Perfect
Yeah,
role for him.
yes. And then in a small little role, like barely in the movie, only for a minute, James fucking Hong.
Yes.
Yeah, so he is in a movie that you and I will eventually have to talk about. It's not a post-apocalyptic movie. It's not an apocalyptic movie. It's just a good fucking movie, and that's Big Trouble in Little China. And
Oh,
James Hong is definitely one of the best parts of a Big Trouble in Little China.
absolutely.
He's
One
the
of the
best
best
part of
movies ever
most
made.
movies he's in.
Oh,
Yes, yes.
absolutely
My
he is.
favorite John Carpenter movie, one of my favorite movies of all time.
Hmm.
Yes, I love Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh
And
yeah.
James Hong is in this only for just a moment. He shows
Just a little
up and
bit.
then he leaves. But yeah, he does show up
Yeah.
for a brief period of time there. So yeah, that is kind of our background. So we'll get into a little bit of the
Yeah.
development now because this movie had a lot of studio interference. So we kind of touched on a few things, just kind of talking a few more points here that the
Yeah.
studio, because the studio demanded changes, right?
Yeah.
They did not like the finished product, even though it screened pretty well. Every
Hmm.
single time they screened it, though, they kept changing and cutting things and changing and cutting things and changing
Uh,
and cutting things to the point where eventually the director was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, you're taking away the movie from me. And they just basically, they didn't fire her necessarily, I don't believe, but they basically kind of took the movie away from her.
uh.
So the things that they demanded they get changed was they demanded the sex scene between Lori
Oh yeah.
Petty and the kangaroo be removed.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
there is a part where they're laying in bed together, and it kind of alludes to maybe there's going to be some sex. Apparently, there was going to be a sex scene, including a 10-inch dildo that cost about $5,000 to make,
Yep.
being
A prosthetic penis, a 10-inch
being
prosthetic
completely
penis
removed from the script and not used.
would have been
Um,
great.
yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So speaking of prosthetics and the kangaroo, so
Mhm.
they were designed by Stan Winston's studio, which is
Yes,
a very, very popular, famous studio. He actually took a pay cut to work on this movie.
that's right.
So
He
yeah,
did.
he was willing to work for less than what he
Well, because
normally
I
got
think
paid.
he'd seen the designs of the kangaroo or the rippers, and that was I think what in the interviews or whatever that I saw, he basically said like that's basically the thing he's been trying to do.
Yeah.
Like those were the kind of creatures he's been trying to make.
Yeah,
So
and we'll talk more about the kangaroos as we watch this, as we
yes.
talk about the plot of this movie, because there's a weird connection to our very, very first episode hidden in here
Uh,
somewhere that I want to see have talked about to you. Um, Other things that the studio cut was basically the ending. The ending was supposed to be very
yeah.
different. It was supposed to actually end with it raining for the first time in forever.
Hmm.
and then she was supposed to like burp or fart in the camera, something like
Yes.
that. That's not how the movie ends.
No.
But that was supposed to be how the movie ended. So they took away that. They took away the sex scene. They completely removed Subgirl as a character.
Hmm.
Not only that though, but the writers of the movie, the two guys who wrote the comic book, they also hated this working on this movie
Oh.
because the studio kept demanding them change things and kept demanding things be removed, things be altered. They were basically changing the script like every single day, changing different
Uh,
things. So it was just a very difficult time for them. And in fact, that's why a lot of the animated scenes exist, is because there's apparently they just forgot to film certain scenes. So they
oh,
had to
wow.
go in and animate scenes to connect the dots between these links in the movie because of how much got cut, how much got edited, and then eventually just, frustration taking over and everyone just kind of being like, well, fuck it. I don't give a shit anymore. I'm just kind of giving up on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of the background of the movie. It's one of those ones that did have a kind of an interesting background because of how much stuff
Yeah.
was happening
Oh, yeah.
around at the time. Speaking of the time, let me get to this time because we're
Oh,
about to
yeah.
move into our 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 little trivia section. This is going to be a little different though because we got to talk about a couple other things here that
Hmm.
were interesting about this. We haven't talked about the soundtrack yet. So, soundtrack is was originally like we talked about. Courtney Love helped with the soundtrack,
Hmm.
but it's a lot of good '90s punk music and '90s alt
Yes.
rock as well. Green Day was supposed to be on there. They did not show up on there, obviously.
No, they didn't.
They got a little too big. Um,
Oh,
so this would
okay.
have come out when this movie came out before Green Day's second big album, Insomniac, came out. So at this
Hmm.
point in time, the only like big Green Day album would have been Dookie. Now,
Right.
if you were like maybe some of the actors had Nimrod because they were like into like underground punk on Lookout, I
Hmm.
don't know. But you definitely could get Dookie everywhere.
Oh,
And if
yeah.
you look at Dookie, I listened to it today while I was working because
Yeah.
I was trying to think of like what song would have they wanted. I feel like it would have been
Mm.
Welcome to Paradise.
Oh, that makes sense.
I feel like that's the song that would have made the most sense to use. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that, but looking at just Dookie, like what song on that would have made sense to use? That's the one I think maybe would have gone with, but maybe they would have gone with something off of Nimrod. Either way, Green Day got too big and they couldn't afford them anymore. Um, so yeah, speaking of things they couldn't afford, this movie came out the exact same year as Waterworld, which was another big
Oh,
budget post-apocalyptic into the
yeah.
world movie that involves water, like this
Hmm.
movie does. We
Yeah.
did not talk about who auditioned for this movie. Did you get to see in your research some other musicians that auditioned
Oh,
and
no, I
did
didn't.
not make it? So three of the Spice Girls auditioned for this movie.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So all three, not all three, there's more than three of them, but three of the Spice Girls did all audition for this movie. And you can actually go online and you can see like footage of them all in line waiting to audition for Tank Girl. Um,
Ooh.
the director said that that was kind of a publicity stunt that the studio did to get drum up interest in the character, that she already knew at that point who Tank Girl was going to be, and she had already
Oh.
cast most of the characters. She knew, like, so it was just kind of a publicity stunt, and then that it kind of amounted to really nothing. But
Yeah.
that's what they did. Obviously, the movie is set in Australia and
Hmm.
connecting to who now owns the rights to this movie and is potentially doing a remake of it. Did you get to see who did this?
Oh, no, I did not.
In 2019, Margot Robbie bought the rights.
Oh,
So her
really?
production studio owns that. So if I could see anyone remaking Tank Girl and doing a pretty good job, I could see Margot Robbie doing a pretty good
Oh,
job
I
with
think she
Tank
could.
Girl. She's one of those actresses that, like, when I first saw her, the first movie I remember seeing her in was probably Wolf on Wall Street, and
Yeah.
I remember thinking like she was interesting and fun, but like not anything where I was like, oh, I'm like immediately like this is going to be like the next huge actress or whatever. But
Yeah.
every movie I've seen her in, I always really like Margot Robbie. Um,
Absolutely.
I love the Barbie movie. I thought the Barbie movie was
Yes,
fucking amazing.
it was
I thought
amazing.
that movie was so funny. I liked it more than my wife did. Like I think my wife and
Yeah,
me, we went into watching Barbie thinking that she was gonna love it, and by the end of it, she was like, "It's okay," and I was just like, "I really like that movie."
it
Like I
was.
thought it was a
Yeah,
really good
I'm
movie.
with you on this one.
I like how I like it reminded me of Josie and the Pussycats in that it was
Yeah,
this like very, very, very clear social satire masquerading as like a big budget blockbuster movie. And if
yes,
you read between the
100%.
lines, click just that were very, very big lines that you could very easily read between. You could very easily tell what the subtle message is, and it is I liked the message they were throwing down. It made me
Oh,
happy.
absolutely.
Um,
Oh yeah,
so this movie obviously has a big punk soundtrack. Hopefully, if they remake it, they keep that. But the
they
big punk
really need to.
albums of 1995. So this movie came out in 1995. Let's talk about the big punk albums that came out at the same year this movie did, and then I'll tell
Ooh,
you who was on the charts. Because unfortunately, there is no punk on the charts, at least in the top five.
I could see that for 95.
No. Also, no grunge.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no grunge in 95 on the top five. Nope.
Well,
But
there goes
there
any
were
guesses I would have had.
in spite of that, it was a good year for punk. So these are the albums that came out in 1995, and then we'll talk about like I said, the top five songs. So and Out Come the Wolves came out in 95.
Do I know that one?
Rancid,
Oh, is that okay? Rancid.
yeah, Rancid's and Out Come the Wolves. Green
Okay.
Day's Insomniac.
Mm-hmm.
AFI put out Answers That Stay Fashionable.
Okay.
Blink 182 put out Cheshire Cat.
Fun
Uh,
fact: I saw Blink 182 in concert in God, it had been like what 98 or 99,
nice.
right about when they were getting real big,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
and um, so I got to see them in concert, and it was pretty cool.
About Time by Pennywise came out this year.
Okay.
Lagwagon put out Hoss.
Dang.
We got Millencolin put out Life on a Plate, which is one of my favorite Millencolin albums.
Mm-hmm.
Fugazi put out Red Medicine, and
Ooh.
Jawbreaker put out Dear You. So that is
Okay.
all in 1995. So it was a
You're
good
right.
year
Good
for
year.
it's a good year for some good punk music coming out. So
Yes.
this soundtrack was right up there with a lot of good punk music.
Oh
So
yeah.
the top five songs, like I said, in 1995, the
Oh,
day this movie came out, March
I have
30th, that
I have
week.
no guesses.
Ugh,
I was gonna go
I don't
grunge.
blame you.
I really was.
Yeah. So the other than one of them, they all make sense. But
Yeah.
I'm just surprised to not see any rock music in the top five at all at this time period. Just thought you would have seen one. But number
Yeah.
five is Sheryl Crow, Strong Enough.
I don't even know if I know that song. I mean, maybe I would recognize it, but I
Title
don't know the
alone
name.
did not evoke any memories into my
No.
mind, but I could be wrong on that. Number four and number three are TLC, Red Light Special, and Creep.
Okay. Yep, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Number two is a song called Candy Rain by Soul for Real.
Nope.
Not
Never
familiar
heard
with
of it.
that at all. And number one is Take a Bow by Madonna.
Oh, really? Okay.
A
I,
Madonna
I
song was number
I
one
don't
in
even think I know
1995 on
that
March
song.
30th. I was not familiar either, but just like Madonna, we will take a bow and say
Mm.
a little pause from our sponsors and then come back and talk about the plot. So we'll
With
be
more
back in
award-winning segues, I hope.
we'll be back in just a moment. Talk to you guys in a second. Welcome to the End of the World podcast. Weekly, myself and others will descend into apocryphal madness as we look at some of the best depictions of the end of the world that television and film can offer us. Join us as we look at poorly aged vanity projects, miscast sci-fi epics, and just utter train wrecks of circumstance. We will see boys and dogs, nukes and viruses, roller skating Stallone brothers, zombie Elvis, chaotic allegories for Christ, and aquatic zombie Nazis off of Florida's most beloved coastline. And that just describes a few movies. You can find us on YouTube at Welcome to the End of the World podcast and everywhere else as well. Thanks.
Power and strength.
And we're back.
We
Welcome
did
to
it.
the movie. We're gonna talk about the plot. So,
Yes.
here is the plot of Tank Girl. We're gonna break it on down. Basically, the world is 2033 and the world is screwed, which is probably not far from the truth in a couple years. Yeah. So
Start
this
hoarding
time,
water.
yeah, or start hoarding some water, baby. So in this universe, a comet has hit the Earth, and no water and no celebrities anymore, man.
Yeah.
And we meet Tank Girl, and she is out searching the wasteland for the perfect gift for her boyfriend. A boyfriend
Whatever
that
she finds
I was
laying
gonna say,
around.
whatever she finds
Yeah.
laying around. Our boyfriend is gonna change here in a minute. Um, so then we're talking about we get introduced to these rippers and we kind of get told a little bit about them. The movie jumps
Mhm.
between live action, comic book stills, and kind of like a little intermix of both at times.
Yeah.
It's a fun watch. It's really
Oh, it is.
visually interesting.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
we also get told about who our villain is, which is a group called Water and Power, and her
Hmm.
friends they do not support water and power.
No, they steal their water.
It's true because in this universe, water is power,
Hmm.
and Michael McDowell's character is going to get that water any way he can.
Hmm. Oh,
uh,
God.
some violent ways, yeah. So his
I
big
was about
way
to say,
is
his way
sticking
is
like a
crazy.
suction cup onto your body and sucking the water out of you,
Yeah.
which is basically what he
Uh,
does to his second in command, pretty much at the beginning of the movie, who
yep.
we find out has kind of let him down. Um,
Yep.
he thinks he's done a good job, but hasn't really done such a hot job.
No,
Yeah, so
didn't
he
give his
kills
best.
JD Vance pretty much right away. Pretty
Very
much
nice.
kills him right away. Um, and then they raid Tank Girl's compound, and this is when we kind of finally get to see Tank Girl in her true Tank Girl behavior. We
Hmm.
meet she is pointing a gun at her boyfriend, and they have like a weird sex game they're playing.
Yes.
And this movie is kind of like a feminist movie in that sense that we have a female character who is very upfront with her sexuality.
Yeah.
Um, in kind of like non necessarily 100% hetero way sometimes. There is some
Yeah.
dips into like lesbianism and self
Hmm.
love, and those things are kind of all talked about and discussed. Her boyfriend for the longest time in the movie is a kangaroo.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some interesting things going on here about that. But her name is Rebecca. Um,
Yep.
at this point, she's not Tank Girl. She's just Rebecca.
Yep.
The compound gets raided though because they know that they are stashing water. And
Hmm.
this is where we get separated, where she gets separated from her little friend that she's really trying to protect most of the movie, which is a character named Sam, who's the little girl.
Same. Little
Yeah.
girl who was in the Babysitters Club movie, and the main reason I know that is because my sister was really into those books. So
Nice.
that VHS got played a lot.
I was gonna say I've never watched that before. I saw that she was in that and I was like, I've never seen that before. Don't know if that's what we're talking about, but yeah.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
it probably wouldn't work to watch it at our age now. I'm gonna say don't.
Yeah,
Just
probably not. So Rebecca gets captured and she gets taken back to the villain's lair.
yes,
And this is where we get to see her be basically subjected to a long period of torture.
yes,
And she makes a new friend along the way, though. This is also where we meet Jet Girl, who is also enslaved and
hmm,
is forced to fix jets and try to repair them for water and power.
yes,
Yeah, so eventually Tank Girl, she gets tortured in various different ways. She kind of
yeah,
rebels, fights back every single time. And then eventually she gets tortured into basically having PTS like a PTSD
hmm,
flashback. And yeah, so
yeah. I will say the like torture scenes, great set pieces, really good
yeah,
visuals.
yeah, yeah,
Like
they are
that, it was
very
really
intense.
compelling.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
it is
yeah, they were.
intense shit. It's very interesting. It's very intense stuff. So eventually she is assigned to her new task, which is basically to be Ripper bait. So they're
Yep.
going to just have her go out and if she gets attacked by Rippers, cool. We know that that's where their lair is at. If you don't, then cool, you'll just die.
Yeah.
Like they don't really have a plan for her other than that. But at this point, they kind of hate her because of how annoying she's been to them and
Yeah.
how much they've tortured her. Everyone else they've tortured kind of breaks,
Yeah.
but she just refuses to. So they kind of are at their wits' end with her. Um,
Mm.
and this is where we get our first Ripper attack of the movie.
Yeah,
This is also where a villain seemingly dies at first. Like you think it's pretty much over,
he's
but that's
definitely
not actually what
disarmed.
happens. He does get disarmed. Da da da. Very nice. I like that. Yeah. Um, her friend Jet Girl shows up and helps her out, and so this is kind of where the movie starts in a way. Like everything up to this point is building up to this, because now is where she actually gets to become Tank Girl. Prior to this, while she was enslaved, she kind of found a tank and was fooling around and having fun with it. She tries to escape, but she really can't. But
Yeah.
eventually, whenever the Rippers attack and she's out on the open, she can find a tank, and now we get the Tank Girl. And this is also where we get some really cool animated scenes to set to some really cool punk rock of Tank Girl and
Yes.
Jet Girl just kind of traveling the wastelands and getting into different characters and meeting different people and doing different things. And a
Hmm.
lot of it's animated and it looks really fucking cool.
Yes. It really does.
That's what I wrote down. I said this animation looks amazing. It
It
is
does. It's
very visually
really good.
fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it turns out the villain, like you said, he's not killed. He's just disarmed. So he now has a new mechanical arm, which makes him even more menacing. And this is where the doctor who helps him shows up, and that doctor is played by James
James
fucking
Hong.
Hong. Yeah,
Hell yeah.
which is where we get the Big Trouble in Little China. Um,
Yep. And then he cuts his head off.
Yeah, so Tank Girl and Jet Girl, they come across the idea that they need to redesign their looks because otherwise everyone's going to think that they work for water and power. So
Hmm.
this is where we get another scene, animated scene of them kind of going through and painting and redesigning their tank and their jet, and another
Yes.
very cool, fun scene set to some really
Yeah.
cool punk rock.
Absolutely.
What was your first exposure to punk rock? Since we're talking about it, I don't know if it's going to
Oh
come up
God.
again in anytime soon and in a movie that we're going to talk about.
I mean, it'd have to have been my brother. He was 6 years older than me. Oh, he is still 6 years older than me. We didn't get closer or further away on that. Time still works the same. But so he was my intro to a lot of things like Dynamite Hack and Green Day, and uh, he would listen to Tool. But for the most part, when it comes to punk, mainly it was things like Dynamite Hack was one that I remember a lot that he would play because he had the CDs,
Yeah.
and the Green Day was a big one. Those were kind of my intro. He was about my intro to, well, basically to a whole world of music, but because he was my big intro to music. Because we had MTV, of course, but that was all like hair metal and like pop, like R&B pop type stuff. Like uh, who am I trying to think of? Paul
Janet
Abdul type.
Jackson.
Yeah, basically, yes. So it was a lot of that stuff on that, that we were getting there. He was more like my intro to like Metallica and Green Day and stuff like that. He was my intro to better stuff, Not better,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like different things that weren't, all over the TV.
Yeah. Makes
So,
sense.
but yeah, but he was my intro.
Yeah. That's a cool. Very nice. I got into
Yeah.
punk in a little bit of a different way.
Hmm.
Didn't have I am the older brother. So I didn't
No,
have
right.
anyone to introduce me to punk. Similarly,
Mm.
grew up with MTV playing occasional songs here and there. They had like their own alt channel that they used to do, like 100, I think it was like 180 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
They had Headbangers Ball, but
Yes.
my mom, in a way, got me into punk by accident. She used to just,
Oh.
for Christmas, every Christmas, she used to just go to like Sam Goody and just buy like the top 3 or 4 Al CDs, whatever they were.
Mm.
Every Christmas, that's what she would get me. So I would have like I used to have like a bizarre CD collection because it would
I
just be
bet.
like Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, Beyonce, like TLC, like
Mhm.
Metallica, whatever was popular that year. That's what my mom got me, because that's what my parents listened to. It's just
Right.
whatever was in the charts. That's just kind of what they listened to. So
That's fair.
when I got into punk was through Green Day,
Yeah.
and through Green Day, it was discovering other bands because at the back
Mhm.
of Green Day's album, they had like a thanks area, and that used to be
Ah.
where I would go to find other bands. And so from there, it was just like discovering another band, and then another band, and then another one, and another one, and kind of growing and growing and growing until by the time I
Mhm.
got to high school, I was kind of into like hardcore and listening to like the Dead Kennedys and Minor Threat and Discharge, Bad Brains, shit
Mhm.
like that. Um, I was the only punk kid, not the only punk kid in school, but I was the only punk kid in like of my group of friends in Texas before I moved
Mhm.
originally. My family moved when I was a junior in high school. So when that happened, that kind of like, I got introduced to another group of friends that had a lot more punks in them. But originally, I
Mhm.
was the kid that listened to punk amongst a bunch of other people that listened to screamo or heavy metal,
Y-
and that
Yes.
was it. And I was the one that was like, yeah, they're talking about like, like you said, like Metallica, Slayer, Iron Maiden,
Right.
or I don't know what screamo was popular at the time, Planes Mistaken for Stars, something like that, right? And then I would be talking, about like, oh, like Minutemen.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different,
Yeah.
but I kind of got into it through that way, and then just kind of like I said, looking at the notes of albums and discovering more and more bands, because a lot of those old albums, they used to, like, in the thank you section, they would
Mhm.
thank a bunch of bands, and you would just go there and be like, okay, so this band I liked, and they're saying this other band is also cool, I should probably check them out next time I go to the CD place. Like, you make a little mental note or something to
Mhm.
look for, to go and buy CDs back whenever I used to go to Hastings a lot and get CDs.
Yeah.
Back when you
Dang.
used to be able to get them for like dirt cheap.
I
I
wished I'd
think they've gone up
thought
now.
of that. I never
That
considered to do that. So you definitely got a much more like a head start than I would have
That's how
back
I
then.
did it. I mean, that was before, like, I didn't like, we had the internet, but it was not the internet like we know it today.
Yeah.
Back then, back in the mid 90s, early
Mhm.
early 2000s. It's around after 9/11 it started changing quite a bit. But before
Yeah.
then, you couldn't really, it was not a place you could go to and get like music
Oh
recommendations
no.
100% all the time. Especially if you were looking for something like that. You could find it in the chat room though. I remember spending a lot of time in
Yeah.
chat rooms.
Oh
That was
yeah,
another way
IRC
I
chat.
like discovered more punk bands, was in chat rooms back in like
Oh,
the
that's cool.
Yahoo and AOL chat room days.
Oh
I
god,
used
I'm
to spend a lot
remembering
of time on
further back
those.
than that. That's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah. That's how I used to spend my time on the internet as a youth, was just
Yeah.
hanging out in chat rooms.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. See, well, and I'm thinking of before then, even like in the like '98 time, like that around
Hmm.
there. That was about the time I was getting introduced to the internet, and I'd have been about, I don't know what, '98. I'd have been like 15, so I was younger than that actually. Now that I think about it,
Hmm.
so we would have had it in like '95, '96.
Yeah.
So
We had
yeah, I was.
dial up. We had dial
Yep,
up until
had the
like
dial up.
I graduated high school. So like we had dial up until like 2003.
Yeah.
2004. Yeah, it was, we had dial up for a long time at my house. Yeah, that's all my parents had. They weren't really concerned about the whole internet thing. It was not really
Yeah.
something that they were like, all right, it's like, I think they kind of viewed it as almost like a fad, that it would just
That's
kind of, people would kind of
yeah.
get tired of it. Like, oh, okay, whatever, the internet. Yeah,
It's
I
just
roll.
another toy.
And then eventually they were like, "Oh, this is never going to stop." It's like,
Yeah,
nope,
right. Yeah, it's
this became your life. So back to the movie, kind of
oh yeah.
spiraled out a little bit there as we got
Yeah.
lost in the wastelands. But the movie also kind of gets
Nice.
lost a little bit here, I will say, because this is probably the most padded out part of the movie,
Mm.
where we spend a lot of time just with the girls kind of just like dicking around in the wasteland.
Yeah.
And then eventually they make their way to Liquid Silver, which is where they believe Sam is located at. And this is
Yes.
where we meet Subgirl, who is this Liquid Silver kind of matron of this kind of brothel strip club, like
Oh,
gambling casino thing. It's
was
kind of
Jet
hard to
Girl
say
not
what it
the
was.
the rain lady?
Yeah, she was.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this is immediately where they show up, and pretty much shortly thereafter, we get a big musical.
Yes.
And the musical is either you like it or you don't.
Yeah, that's a really
Apparently,
it's a
uh,
litmus test.
apparently, it would have gone on much longer in the original version. This is
Oh.
one of the parts that the studio cut a lot out. Apparently, while it was happening, Jet Girl was going to be doing stuff, and Sub Girl was going to be doing things, and there was going to be Tank Girl kind of reenacting Sid Vicious scene from Nevermind the Bollocks.
Oh, really?
And the documentary, I think that's the name of the documentary, I can't remember, about the Sex Pistols. Yeah, there was going to be some stuff going on there. Yeah, a lot of that stuff got cut out. Apparently, every time they showed this movie to people, the people's biggest reaction and the thing that they thought maybe needed to be cut out was the musical.
Oh,
And so they kept cutting it and kept cutting it and kept cutting it until we kind of get what it is in this movie, which is kind of nonsensical. It
yeah,
doesn't
it's
really
pretty
have a whole lot
nonsensical.
of, but it fits in the movie because the movie kind of is a little zany, so it kind of works. But yeah,
Yeah,
they basically the girls just reenact Cole Porter for a little while.
yeah, it's a good time.
It's a good time. That's it. That's basically what happens. They have a whole musical. It's just part of the movie.
Just, yep,
Not the
everybody's just
first
on board all of a sudden.
yeah, it all makes sense, you know. And this is the last we see of Subgirl. She does not show up again.
Yeah, that's it.
In the original version, she was going to show up again. That
Yeah,
unfortunately does not happen.
I did see the alternate ending that I found on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
I'm actually really bummed that I don't have a DVD copy or Blu-ray of it because I really want all the special features because I want to see
Yeah.
everything.
There's
I
a
want
there's a really good
commentary. I
Blu-ray
want
copy that came out a couple years ago. I don't know if it's still
yeah.
available to buy, but I know there's a good Blu-ray copy that has a lot of the special features. It has like
Oh,
a
see, I
director's
want it.
commentary and stuff like that.
That's what I want.
Yeah. I'll have to look it up and see how much it is for you.
Yeah.
So during at the end of this whole musical number, Sam is unfortunately kidnapped by Water and Power.
Yeah.
And this sets up the second half of the movie, which is basically Tank Girl finding the Rippers because she needs their help. She needs an
Mm-hmm.
army if she's going to go get Sam back from Water and Power.
There you go. Yeah,
And
because
this,
they I think what that's the second time she got kidnapped by them.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the movie has a lot of damsel in distress
Yeah.
tropes that kind of maybe undermine some of its feminist, but it kind of takes those tropes and plays with them in interesting
I
ways.
think so.
So I
Yeah.
don't know if you can necessarily 100% say it undermines any of the feminist kind of
Yeah, I don't
themes
think so.
present in the movie, or at the very
Okay.
least, you could argue that the movie kind of rectifies some of the
I think so.
problematic
It
nature of its
it
writing.
helps. I think it helps that it was such a young, it's a child. She's
Yeah,
basically she's saving a kid,
yeah, yeah.
So,
I mean, in the movie, like Lori Petty herself has said, like the movie is you have to look at it as what it is. Like it's supposed to be a fun time. Like it's
yeah.
supposed to be a fun time. If you came into it thinking every single part of it was going to be exactly 100% sensical,
Yeah.
you came to the wrong movie. This is a movie called Tank Girl. You probably should have done a little bit of research.
Yeah, right.
And so she goes and has to find the Rippers, and this is where we meet our little Ripper group. And this is where immediately I am reminded of a movie that we talked about on our very first episode, Warriors of Virtue.
Oh, yes.
Another movie that came out in the 90s that starred kangaroos that fought.
Yep. Yep.
This was a thing in the 90s that I do not remember being a thing. When did kangaroos have like an arc in the 90s that I am not recalling? Because I don't remember us all of a sudden deciding kangaroos are like really fucking cool. But this
Here's
is
my here's my
second
best
movie
guess at
now.
that. Well, don't forget. Well, this may have been in the 2000s, but Kangaroo Jack.
That was much later, and that movie
It
is an
was much later.
abomination to
Okay.
man.
I don't know, man. It was a good. Oh man, what was it? I can't even remember the guy's name that was in it. He
Anthony
was
Anderson.
Quinn on Sliders.
Oh,
Yeah,
that dude. Oh shit, I forget his name too.
yeah. I
I know who
always
you're
forget
talking
his
about.
name. Yeah, so I always just say Quinn from Sliders because I love that show.
That's a good
But
show.
oh,
First
it's
couple
such a good
seasons.
show. Well, yeah, the first. But the I may have lost my train of thought.
It
I
finally
started
happened to
talking
you.
about yeah, I started talking about Kangaroo Jack. That it derails you. It is a disease of a movie. Okay, so here's my best guess for why fighting kangaroos could possibly have some kind of popularity or some kind of appeal. We had Ninja Turtles.
Yep.
That started a whole like anthropomorphic fighting animals thing.
It's true.
And then you also had Crocodile Dundee, so people were really into Australia. So I could see maybe there's something like a crossover there.
I want to fight that kangaroo. That's it. There you go.
That's it.
That's all the
There it
logic you
is.
need. And then
That's all it
someone
takes.
thought, what if they have weapons and they fight with the weapons? And then, oh my
Yeah.
God, we've opened up layers of depth to these
Hey, didn't
kangaroos.
Tekken have a fighting kangaroo too?
It does, but he's got boxing gloves on, and you can easily swap him out for a raptor as well. I don't really think he has
Oh.
any like significance in the story of Tekken,
No,
but
I don't think so.
The Tekken story makes no fucking sense. That's a
Oh,
whole
I
other thing.
the whole other
Dear
thing.
God. Yeah, fighting game movies are a whole
Oh
other thing.
God.
So the Rippers, we talked about who the cast is. Ice-T,
Hmm.
this is where we meet him. This is also where we meet her love interest, who she's gonna fall in love with, which is he's a
Yep.
kangaroo,
He's a
which
kangaroo.
is a thing either you're on board with or you're not.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. If the musical number didn't make you check out, the kangaroo scenes might make you be like, "What the fuck am I
Yeah.
watching?" But if you're on board with it, then it works, and I'm
Absolutely.
on board with it. Like I'm
I'm
fine with
totally on
this.
board.
I like Warriors of Virtue as well. Like I'm fine with
Yes.
the fighting kangaroos. Like in spite of not remembering this ever happening, I'm okay with it somehow.
That's fair.
I just am
I'm with
curious as
it.
to why it didn't go further. Like the turtles got hugely popular. We needed a
Yeah.
group of 5 fighting kangaroos.
I mean,
I don't know what
oh,
their name would be. We'll brainstorm and think of it
I
later.
was about to say, we'll ride it. Let's do it.
We can come up with it. So the girls
We
have
can
to
do
prove
it.
themselves.
Yes.
And so
Oh,
they send them
speaking
to
of
basically
the,
like a little oh go ahead.
I was gonna say, dude, speaking of the Rippers and everything, I think I might have recognized one of the extra kangaroos because I looked in the the cast list. Doug Jones was one of the additional Rippers, and
Nice.
he's kind of he's got a pretty memorable face.
Yeah,
Uh, I think he was just kind of I can't remember which one he would have been, but he was just kind of there too because they had stuntmen in there too.
nice.
But yeah, so
Yeah,
we had a
apparently it took like 4 hours to put the makeup on. So it was quite an
Did you hear what
extensive
Ice T
little
said about that? About
that it
the
was better
makeup?
than prison.
Yeah, isn't
Yeah,
that
which is
awesome?
it's true. Yeah. Hey, can't complain too much when you say that.
Can't
You're like,
complain.
oh, hey, what are you
All
gonna do?
right.
Yeah. So, yeah, the girls have to prove themselves, which is
Yes.
basically they hijack a arms delivery to Water
Hmm.
and Power, or so they think. Turns out
Yes,
it's not actually what they think, and they do it in a very funny way, involving
they
them
do.
pretending to be fashionistas who were there to take a calendar shoot of the men of Water and Power, and these are all these like overweight, fat, sweaty guys posing for
Yes.
pictures. It's very funny. It's very,
Yeah,
very
and
funny.
you get like that setup. You get Lori Petty being like saying because like what Jet Girl's like um trying to stop her from like just running down there, and she's like, "You're gonna get torn apart. You're gonna get you're gonna get basically destroyed by all these group like this huge group of people." And Lori Petty or Tank Girl's response to that was, "They're men. Well, like she's gonna be able to handle them." I was like, "That's
Yeah,
cool. I like that."
which is true. Like
Yeah.
she kind of knew right away, like they're men. Like we got this. Like they'll do whatever we want them to. They're very
That
simple
was
creatures,
I liked that.
which is fair.
Yeah.
So we then so the girls are successful, they get the shipment, they go back, and this is where we kind of start to see the romance between Tank Girl start to brooding with the kangaroo that she's
Yep.
falling in love with. Um this is the
And
part of
Jet
the
Girl
movie
gets
where the
kind of
sex scene would have been.
yeah, and then and we're starting to see like Jet Girl gets paired kind of de facto to the pervert one, like the sex assault.
Yeah, he kind of just keeps humping her a lot, and I
Yeah,
don't think she's comfortable with it, and I it's uncomfortable for me
I
too.
was gonna say it made me very uncomfortable, even when I was
It
like 13 watching it.
Yeah, it's a little weird. It's a little weird.
Yeah.
So after they realize that the shipment is not what they thought it was, they develop a
Oh.
plan to get even. So what's in the shipment?
Oh, in the shipment you get Johnny Prophet,
Yeah, which has been
which
basically not that I was gonna say their role model. He's more than that. So we'll go
he's
ahead.
more, I would say, well, because they were kind of an experiment they were genetically modified, right? Like they
Yeah,
and Johnny
yeah.
Prophet was like the lead on that, I guess, like that project.
Yes, yes. I believe that is what they said. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
So
and
that's kind of what their animosity towards water and power stems from.
he's their splinter.
Yeah, basically. Yes, yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
can circle back. I can do it. You have your
Yeah.
segues. I can,
You got your circles.
I
We
got
make a
circles.
good circle. So we get our final showdown shortly thereafter because the group makes a plan. They decide to go after water and power, and unfortunately, this is where Deet is killed. And
Yes,
anytime where the kangaroos have to emote, it's a little funny. Not gonna
it's a
lie.
little funny.
It's not. I don't know if it's supposed to be funny, but it comes across a little humorous. I think it's
It,
just the. I think it's just the
yeah,
unfortunate side effect of the fact that they're kangaroos.
yeah.
Uh, so it is what it
It's like
is.
you really feel the absurdity of the situation where you're like,
It
oh wait,
yeah,
what's yeah,
it is. It is a little bit like, oh, this is a comic book. Like this would have worked a lot better on a comic book. This may not work
yeah,
the best visually. It might be just a little tad too ridiculous,
yeah,
but it is very funny. And it's unfortunate that Deet dies. He's a good
yeah,
character and
because
he
he's
gets
cool.
killed. And
He's the
yeah,
reincarnation of Jack Kerouac,
he is the reincarnation of Jack Kerouac. He plays a
and he has a
mean
really
sax.
cool that beat poem was awesome.
Yes, yes. He also does a good beat poem. He has a good sax scene. He's
Oh,
a
it's
good
so
little
good.
fun character. Apparently, he, as an actor, loved the comics and wanted to be in this very, very badly.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he's one of the few actors that like not only read the comics, like really liked them and like kind of knew all about the characters and
Yeah.
was really happy to be on board with this. So
Well, and he
I was kind
also
of happy
plays the
that he got to do
sax.
that.
Yeah, he plays the sax in the movie because he brought it with him to the
Yeah,
interview, or not the
yeah,
interview,
yeah,
the
yeah,
what do you call
yeah.
it?
Audition.
Um audition. I know what words are. Um
Yeah,
but
yeah, I saw that
yeah.
too. Yeah, that he like it just had a saxophone with him and was like,
Yeah,
"I'll bring it with me." I was like,
there
"That's not a
you
bad idea."
go. Which by the way might be that's my like if I could just say like what I miss most in modern music is the saxophone. I want more saxophone.
You need more
I miss it.
sax.
I need more sax, man.
So after he's killed, unfortunately, we get our showdown between Tank Girl and our villain of the story, and this is where we get our final showdown. But we also find out that Tank Girl has been unfortunately kind of like a microphone this entire time.
Yeah.
So when she was first kidnapped and sent on to her mission, he kind of instills in her a little device to keep track of her at all times. And I
Hmm.
think she thinks she destroys it, but it turns out it wasn't really destroyed. And we
Yeah.
see this along the way because we see him kind of listening in and hearing
Yes.
her and the group are making plans. Oftentimes he just kind of lets her get away with certain things,
Yeah.
kind of setting up for kind of this final showdown. He
Hmm.
seems to kind of enjoy this little rivalry he has with her, which is
Yeah,
kind of
he's
once again very much like a comic book, right? They kind
oh
of
yeah,
these
absolutely.
two kind of go together. Their fight scene is kind of fun, but
It
she
really
does
is.
defeat him.
With the power of projectile beer.
Yes, yeah. So she defeats him by shooting him from her tank with a bunch of beer cans over and over and over again.
It's so cool.
So she saves Sam and she gets our kangaroo kiss. And
Yep.
my wife was watching this with me, and she immediately said, "Why is this the second movie that ends with an animal, with a human being kissing an animal that we've watched?" And I said, "I don't know. I can't justify that. I didn't write this. I also didn't write Planet of the Apes, where it happens in
Yep.
that movie either. I'm sure it'll
So
show up again in a different movie, but
are you
yeah,
telling me that uh your wife hadn't seen this movie before?
I don't believe she had. No,
Wow, is it like is this a niche or are we like
it definitely is a cult movie. Like this movie is
okay.
definitely a cult movie for sure.
I that's fair.
I don't know if the feminist market that it was aiming for necessarily hit its target with who it likes this movie. But I also know there's a lot of men that I've listened to do reviews of this movie that hate this movie.
Wait, really?
So yeah, there's a lot of
Oh, I'm
people
gonna have
that
to go
really
check that out.
despise this movie. There's a lot of people that really, really hate this movie. I That's just because we're at the end of it now. We'll talk about
Yeah.
it. I do not hate this movie at all. I actually
No.
really, really like this movie. I'll go
Oh, I
first this
love
time,
this
and then
movie.
I'll let you take over and
Yes.
tell your thoughts on it because I know you have a lot to say.
Hmm.
This is a movie that I first encountered in my probably Oh, I don't remember the exact year or the exact age. I was not an adult, but not graduate from high school yet, so probably like 16, 17, something along that era. And I remember seeing it on TV, HBO, Cinemax, something like that, and being very struck by it because visually it stands out. It is very different than a lot of the movies that were out at the time. Compared to some movies that have come out since then, you could see that, it has some similarities.
Mhm.
But in terms of like movies that blended animation and live action, I had not seen anything quite like that. Nor had I seen Lori Petty play this character before. I'd seen her in other movies, obviously, like I said, in A League of Their Own quite a bit, and
Yeah.
in Point Break and a few other movies as well up to that point, but had never seen Tank Girl. And immediately after watching it, really, really had a lot of fun. Liked it, loved the soundtrack, wanted to learn more about the character. Tried to find the books in small town Texas before the
Mhm.
internet was a thing or Amazon was established, so that never happened. I did eventually read a little bit of the comic book. I rented it from the library and read it here in Memphis, because we had it for a little while, but never finished the entire thing. It has, like you said, it's very, very British,
Mhm.
and so some of the humor is a little over my head because I am
Yeah.
not British, so some of the references I don't quite get. But I do like a lot of the references that I do get that are from
Mhm.
it that are in it, and I had a lot of fun watching this movie, and I think this is maybe one of the more fun post-apocalyptic movies that's out there, which is
I
fun
would
to
say,
say.
yeah.
Like when you look
Yeah.
about like post-apocalyptic movies that are fun, this one is
Yeah.
maybe one of the funnest ones that you're ever going to watch. So my feelings on it are, this is an amazing movie. I think it's one of the best comic book movies ever made. Um,
Mhm.
I think it's a really fun time. So I'll let you say what you got to say.
Very similar ideas there. Very similar. I come off, or I came away with a lot of the similar feelings. I This movie would have come out when I was about, 12 or so. Definitely didn't see it in theaters, but started seeing it on, the movie channels. Like I think what we had was called the movie channel. So like in little, like we had 24 channels, and that was one of them. So,
Yeah.
yeah, like that was where I saw a lot of movies, and that's where I parked myself. That's so I my family didn't watch movies. I was the only one. So, I just basically just was in my room watching movies all day and night. And remember Tank Girl coming on, and I would probably be about like maybe 13 or 14, and it was just a revelation, man. Like I'd never seen anything like it. There weren't movies like that. It was the best way I could say it. It was like the most punk thing I'd seen up to that point, and it was just like you know, I never thought a movie could just be like that, be visual, be very stylized, be very almost not take itself so seriously,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and just be a really good time, and just be funny, be fun to watch, be, because it's almost like you're in on it as you
Yeah.
watch it. And it just, you're just taken for this ride through this insane post apocalypse with the craziest person in this apocalypse. It's amazing. Um, the characters are great. I mean, Tank Girl as a character, one of my absolute favorite characters of a movie,
Yeah. Oh
like
yeah. Yeah.
for sure. She's basically almost like a cartoon character, and which makes the interludes make all the sense in the world. So it's like those are the real her, and we're just seeing like a version of her in live action. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's it's very much like that's so cool. It informed a lot of my aesthetics for a long time. Um, Clearly, like I said, but yeah, no, it's easily one of my favorite movies. It's right up there. I It's one of the movies I watch. I don't watch it as much as like other movies that I do call my favorite movies. I don't watch it as often as those, but I've definitely watched it more than like a couple dozen times. Like I've seen this movie a lot. I rewatch it
Nice.
anytime I can. I just watch it, and for it to just be on Tubi now, like it's so exciting. I'm probably gonna keep watching it every now and again, just because it's I don't know, it just takes me back to, like, I get that same feeling every single time. Doesn't change. I always have that same feeling. I'm just in, just along for the ride.
It's a good time. Speaking of being along
Yeah.
for the ride, thank you guys for coming along for this ride as we've talked about Tank Girl tonight. It's been a very, very fun time. This is a movie
Mhm.
that we both really, really enjoy, and it's been a fun time watching. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, next week we're going to have another fun time as we look at another end of the world movie as we build up to our end of the year. Um,
Mhm.
so, next week is Thanksgiving. And it's also my birthday next week, so I will
Oh,
be
that's right.
getting ever so close to that illustrious 40 in the sky.
Yeah.
Not quite there yet, but I'm a knocking on the door this year.
Hey, if you're
Then we're
anything like
getting
me,
there.
once I hit 41, I've already had 2 hospital visits, had a kidney stone, like, it's been my body
It's been a
started being
downhill.
it was all like, my body was just holding it together, and then it hit 41, it was like, "We're giving up."
We'll see how the next couple of years play out. But
Yeah.
next week, we are going to get together and we're going to pay thanks. And we're going to talk about a movie that I really, really like. I'm actually sitting here right now watching, looking at, not rather watching, but looking at the Blu-ray copy in front of me because this is a fun time that I have not watched in a while, and it's going to bring up an interesting conversation. Next
Sweet.
week, we are going to watch Your Hunter from the Future.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna be in yours world. He's the
Yours
man.
world. Yeah, he is the man. This will give us an opportunity to talk about a person that I got to introduce you to, who was a big YouTuber
Yes.
back in the day, that we both
Before
had a
YouTube.
lot before YouTube, yeah,
He
that
was
we
he
both
was
had
on
a
Blip.
blip. Yeah, yeah, we're talking about Spoonie there. So
Oh,
talk
the
about his
Spoonie one.
review of this. And not only that, my copy has audio commentary from fucking Reb Brown, I just found out.
No.
So I'm going to be watching this movie twice, once with the commentary from Reb Brown to see what he has to say about this movie, and
Oh,
then
I'm
once
jealous.
without it just to see what it's all about. Obviously, have not watched this in quite some time. It is online for free, I believe. So if you would like to
Oh,
join
if it
along with
isn't,
us,
if I have to buy it, that's a movie to add to my library for sure.
your yeah. So next week we will join for a Thanksgiving special as we talk about You're the Hunter from the Future. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys next time. See ya.
Take it easy.